Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our webinar on proposal writing for energy efficiency projects in Indigenous communities. My name is Erin Peterson, and I'm the program lead for climate and energy resilience at the Fraser Basin Council. I'll be facilitating the webinar. I also have my colleagues Alwyn and Elena here today, and they will be helping out. So if you do have any tech issues with Zoom, please reach out to Alwyn and she'll be able to help you out. You can do that through the chat box, which you'll find at the bottom of the screen. You'll notice that you are muted, so we'll be keeping the audience muted today throughout the webinar, but we will have a Q&A portion. So if you do have questions, we ask that you please try to put them in the Q&A box, which you'll also find at the bottom of the screen. The chat function is available, but for us to find the questions more easily, please put them in the Q&A. We will try to monitor the chat, but that's more if you just wanted to make comments or chat with your fellow participants. So I'll just do a brief land acknowledgement and introduction. So I'm personally very fortunate today to be calling in from the traditional unceded territories of the Hulkaminam speaking First Peoples, which is now called Richmond, British Columbia. So I'd like to thank them for the opportunity that I have to live, work, and play here on these lands. And if you would like, you're welcome to share the territories that you're calling in from in the chat box as well. Just a brief introduction to our organization, the Fraser Basin Council. So we're a charitable nonprofit society, and we support governments, businesses, and community organizations to advance collaborative solutions to sustainability issues. We work in three areas. One is climate change and air quality. Another is watersheds and water resources. And the third is sustainable and resilient communities. Some of the roles we play are facilitator, strategic convener, educator, and program manager. And I will mention we do work throughout the province now. Our work is not limited to the Fraser River Basin. This program is called First Nations Home Energy Save, and it's all about empowering BC First Nations communities to transition toward energy efficient housing through sharing success stories and building local capacity. So a lot of energy efficiency programs are really focused on rebates or funding for retrofits or construction, but this program is different in that we focus more on learning and capacity building. So you can see some of the stuff that we do on the slide there. I'll just plug a couple of our other program offerings that might be of interest to you. We do have a learning grant program, which offers grants that can be used towards energy efficiency focused learning opportunities. So that could be a course, a workshop, or a conference, and that's for any Indigenous folks residing in BC. Then we also have Ask an Energy Specialist, which is for BC Indigenous communities to take advantage of short-term consulting support. So we will put some links in the chat and send them out after the webinar today, but you are also welcome to reach out directly to me if you're interested in either of those. And now we will get into the topic at hand. Just how this will go, we'll start off with the two presentations right one after the other. So Sarah will speak first and then Jasmine will speak, and then afterwards we'll have time for Q&A. But if you do come up with questions throughout, you can throw them in the Q&A box at any time, and then we'll use that to inform the discussion, the Q&A after the presentations. So I'm going to stop sharing my slides and I'll go ahead and introduce Sarah. So Sarah Powell is a member of the Taku River Tlingit First Nation, and she resides in Prince George, British Columbia. She currently works as the manager of clean energy initiatives at the New Relationship Trust. So I'll pass it over to you, Sarah.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Can you see my screen? Good. Perfect. Great. So yeah, thanks so much, Erin. As she mentioned, my name is Sarah Powell. I'm a member of the Taku River Tlingit First Nation. I've been with the New Relationship Trust for just over 4 years now in various roles, but always working with our clean energy initiatives, which we have 2 programs I'll get into a little bit. But I guess a good place to start is, what is the New Relationship Trust? So the New Relationship Trust was created in 2006. It was established with $100 million for the New Relationship Trust Act. This came about through a partnership between various First Nations government organizations in BC, as well as the provincial government. And that is what the trust part of it is. We're not actually a legal trust. It refers to the trusting relationship that we hope to build with BC First Nation communities. We have 6 different funding areas, and in that 16 different funding programs, the last couple of years, we have really expanded our funding program availability. When we started, we just gave out scholarships, which is still one of our main components, but now we have different areas like nation building, food sovereignty, cannabis initiatives, and then as well as clean energy and many other ones that I can't even remember all the names anymore. We are an Indigenous led and run organization. We have an all Indigenous board of directors, and over 50% of our staff is Indigenous. And we pride ourselves on having low administrative barriers. So we pride ourselves on having simple applications and reporting requirements, and often take into feedback to make sure that our process align with what First Nations need in BC. So we have 2 different clean energy funding programs in the New Relationship Trust. Our first one, which has been around since 2016, is the BC Indigenous Clean Energy Initiative, or BCI-CEI, which I'll probably refer to as CEI because that is a very long, unwieldy acronym. It was funded through the Pacific Economic Development Canada, also known as Pacifican, and as well as the Ministry of Energy, Mines and Low Carbon Innovation, also known as EMLI. So it's a funding partnership between our 3 organizations, but the program is administered by the New Relationship Trust. And since 2016, we've awarded over $30 million to more than 130 projects proposed by more than 90 BC First Nations. So we funded almost half of all the First Nations in BC to go on some form of clean energy project. We have 3 funding streams available. We have our project planning stream, which is up to $300,000. And this is for things like pre-feasibility, feasibility, engineering and design, permitting, basically anything that's on a computer preparing for, kind of shovel in the ground construction. Next, we have our small scale energy and efficiency program. This is also up to $300,000 unless you are a diesel dependent community, in which case you're eligible up to $500,000, as we do recognize that costs are much higher in remote communities in BC due to just the remoteness and the difficulty in transporting contractors and supplies to the location. So this stream is for kind of the non-utility scale energy projects. So a lot of times we see sort of net metering solar or residential solar programs, battery energy saving systems on community buildings, as well as efficiency projects. So these often see heat pumps or retrofits on both residential and community buildings to make sure that the building is as energy efficient as possible. And then finally, we have our pre-commercial operation date stream, which is up to $500,000. These are for projects that will be selling the revenue they will be selling the power that the project would produce to some form of entity, whether that be BC Hydro or a private company. We've seen airports or cities, municipalities. And this is funding that was created to address a gap that we saw in that, there's funding available for kind of the feasibility side of things, engineering and design. There's funding for construction, but there's often a lot of costs leading up to actually the shovel in the ground, boots on the ground type of thing. So we created this stream for that type of funding gap. You do need some sort of energy purchase agreement to be eligible for this stream, but that is available. Next, we have our Community Energy Diesel Reduction Stream, or CEDAR for short. This is another funding program that was launched in 2022. This is funded through a partnership with the Ministry of Energy, Mines and Low Carbon Innovation. This also has 3 funding streams. We have a Community Energy Plan stream, which is up to $95,000 for either the development of a new CEP for a community or up to $40,000 for an update for an existing CEP in a community. We also have our demand side management stream. So this is their energy efficiency stream. This is up to $500,000 per fiscal year. So this is for the things like the home assessment, heat pumps, retrofits, anything, again, energy efficiency for both community and residential buildings. And now these 2 streams are CEP and DSM stream. We do have a turnkey option. So for communities that would like to take advantage of this funding, but don't quite have the capacity to fully project manage a brand new CEP or demand side management project, we do offer project management services where we will project manage, and we also have a list of preferred consultants that we could hire to undertake the work so that the community is not taken up with a bunch of time on this project, but they are still reaping the benefits of a community energy plan or energy efficiency project. Finally, we have our renewable energy generation stream, the REG stream. So this is for anything that generates energy. So all sizes of solar, hydro, wind, that type of thing, anywhere from the residential up into kind of the larger community-wide generation projects like a run of the river hydro. And that has a community cap of $4 million over the lifetime of the program. And this covers everything from pre-feasibility all the way up to construction funding. And communities can enter this at any point in their they don't have to go through every single step with us. They can come in and say, hey, we just need some funding for some permitting. They can say we just need funding for construction, or hey, we're just beginning to start. We need funding starting at the pre-feasibility stage. So the CEP and DSM funding streams are accepting applications until November 29th of this year or until funding is exhausted. And the REG stream is accepting applications until next Monday on July 15th. I will mention that this program is only eligible for 44 remote communities in BC, the full list which can be found on our website if you're interested. So after that, getting into effective proposal writing. So we receive a lot of different proposals in NRT through our 16 funding programs. And these are some of the things that I've kind of gleaned what makes a good proposal versus what doesn't make a good proposal, which we'll get into a bit later. So first of all, the biggest thing is ensure that you meet all the listed eligibility requirements and make sure you read the fine print and read everything about eligibility. But every intake we have with BCI CEI, there is 1 or 2 applications that are unfortunately not eligible for our funding. And it's a lot of work to put it in a full application, and there's a lot of time that goes into it. And it's really unfortunate that you do put all that time, put all that work in, and you don't end up being eligible for the funding. So I'd say that is the first big step is when you're doing that. And take the time to read the application fully. Make sure you understand what each question is asking. Again, we see lots of times that it seems that applicants will just read kind of the first sentence of our question on the application form and they'll answer that and move on, but they miss an entire second section that is just underneath that first sentence that we're looking for. And unfortunately, they don't get marked as high because of that. So what I recommend is just read the application first without even trying to fill the application and ensure you understand what each question is asking. And if you don't understand, then please reach out to program staff. Most are very happy to chat about what makes a good application for their program. Here at NRT, everybody is very happy. We encourage communities to reach out to us before they put an application in, ensuring that your project is eligible. So again, you're not running into that thing where you're putting in an application that isn't fully eligible for the funding. But I'm sure that goes for all funders that, you would just send a quick email, hey, like was thinking about applying, can we have like a quick 10-minute phone call? And that is very much, encouraged by, I think, all funding programs. And then next, take the time to read the application fully. So again, making sure you're understanding what each question is asking, as well as tailor your application to the program. So what is the program trying to achieve? So for example, our CEDAR program is all about reducing diesel usage. So in an application that we see, it would be great if someone tailors their application so that this project is going to reduce diesel in this way. This is how much we're going to reduce. This is what each community member is going to do to reduce diesel because of this project. That would mark very high. But if you're applying to some sort of economic development program, then you're looking at, okay, well, what jobs will this project create? Maybe diesel is important, but not quite. So they say, okay, well, these many people will be employed during construction. We're going to run a training program for our schools. And so, yeah, how does your proposed project advance their goals? Again, when funders are looking for something to advance their own goals that they're mandated by through the funding program. So how will your project help them? And then you have the opportunity, please reach out to previous applicants. What feedback did they receive? Again, that maybe don't cold call, but if you do know somebody that applied to a program before, just reach out like, hey, like I know you've sent an application, like maybe they were successful, but there is some, like what did they do that the funders said they did well, or maybe they weren't successful, and what feedback did they receive on that? You can help that as well. Finally, ask if you could submit a draft application. That is something we don't advertise at NRT, but we're very happy to receive draft applications. And then you get the chance to receive direct feedback prior to the application submission. I think we've had 1 or 2 people in the CEDAR program reach out with a draft application, and then you're able to make those changes prior to the due diligence process and potentially, have a better chance of success at funding. Also beware predatory consultants. That is something we run into at New Relationship Trust quite a bit, is where consultants will go to communities, knock on their door and go, hey, the NRT has this great funding opportunity. We'll write the entire application. We'll project manage. You just have to be there to sign off, like absolutely nothing that you guys have to do. Ensure there is community involvement in every step of the project. This is for a couple different reasons. For one, we can tell when an application is just written by a consultant that hasn't even really talked to the community at all, and those don't mark very high because, again, our programs are to benefit communities. And then 2 is that maybe you do get a consultant that doesn't consult with the community because you're too busy, but then you get a project that isn't quite tailored to your community's needs. And maybe it's a feasibility study that just sits on a shelf because nobody actually wanted a wind project in the community. Or, maybe the solar panels that were installed were on a completely wrong building that no one really uses, but this building is falling apart and really needs upgrades and retrofits. So yeah, just ensure that there is community involvement. That's not to say don't use consultants to write applications. I know everyone's very busy, there is professional grant writers out there. Do use them, but again, just ensure that there is community involvement and the consultant is very aware of what the community needs are before they put in an application. And if you are unsuccessful, ask for pathfinding and ask for feedback. That is something I think every funder offers, but not many people take us up on. It's not great to hear kind of the negative feedback about why a proposal didn't go through, but it is important. So yeah, ask what could I do better? What could I improve on next time I apply? Is there another funding option? Is there another funding stream that might be better suited for this project? Do you know of? Can you introduce me to somebody? So, don't just take a no as okay, the project's done, but, continue asking, because most funders will want to see projects succeed, even if they're unable to fund. And then energy efficiency proposals, they can be difficult as the full scope will not be known until after the assessment phase. So again, just try to fill it with what you know. If you're looking at retrofitting, 10 elders' homes, then just say that and say, what, just looking at the homes, we know the windows are really old. The insulation is, falling out of the attic. Those will need to be replaced. But just say, we don't know everything until our assessments will be done, which is part of the scope of the project. And that's okay. Funders do know that. Also noted that EnerGuide assessments are not mandatory. If your community is just doing a simple project, you can do whatever home assessment you would like, but do be aware that underfunding programs may require EnerGuide assessments. I know Canada Greener Homes is no longer accepting applications, but they did require EnerGuide assessments before any retrofit money was released. So just be aware of that. But if you're just doing one little program for NRT programs, we do not require EnerGuide assessments. We just require some sort of home assessment by a qualified assessor. Also confirm stacking restrictions. Again, at NRT, we don't really have any stacking restrictions, but I know lots of energy efficiency programs are stacking ones. And if you have a whole plan about how you're going to get the entire community done, then you find out that stacking is not available, then that is something that you should be aware of right away. Again, you reach out to funders early on and ask about their stacking, as well as make sure that you're confirming equipment and contractor eligibility. There is a list for most energy efficiency funding programs that a list of equipment that is eligible for their retrofits. For example, only some heat pumps are eligible for NRT funding. Mostly they're just CSA stamped, but do be aware of that, as well as contractors. So if you do have to get EnerGuide assessments, make sure that that contractor is listed and qualified to do an EnerGuide assessment. Self-taught is fine. Again, if you're just going to do it in the community and it's very small, but if you're looking at anything expanding or any other funding programs, you're going to want to make sure that both your equipment and contractors are eligible. So things to prepare before submitting an application. Preliminary quotes, reach out to contractors early. Summer is a very busy time for them and they get booked up fast. So if you're thinking about doing a project, almost all contractors are very happy to throw together a quick package of a rough cost of how much it'll take to do a solar project and a heat pump project, that type of thing. And get your supporting documents as well. So make sure you're establishing timelines for any documents that are still to come. For example, ban cancel resolutions. Oftentimes the council will only meet at certain times of the month or year. If you're waiting on that, make sure you're aware so that the deadline doesn't come and go and you go, oh no, they're not going to meet for another month. I missed my opportunity. So making sure that you have enough time to get those supporting documents before the funding application deadline passes. All requested supporting documents as well. And like I mentioned, give a timeline for getting the documents if unable to procure immediately. Here at NRT, we're quite understanding. If a community say, hey, here's my application, but the ban cancel isn't going to meet until 2 weeks from now, I'll get you your signed BCR then. Most funders also will be fairly flexible with that as long as you have a timeline for getting it to them. Include any previous studies that have been done. So any community energy plans, pre-feasibility studies, desktop modeling, anything like that. Basically any documentation that mentions your project and the rationale for why you're continuing on this project. It's great to have a project, but oftentimes what we see in applications is that we're going to do a solar project and then we're asking, why a solar project? Have you looked at heat pumps? Have you looked at other energy efficiency? Does the community agree with solar projects? So anything that mentions your project is good to include. And then any engagement that includes a proposed project. So that doesn't have to be specific engagement sessions on the project, but if it's brought up at council meetings, if it's brought up at community dinners, if you put an online survey out to the community, anything that's showing that you've engaged the community in the project. So again, we know that the community is aware of the project and they're supportive of it. And it's not just coming out of nowhere. It's not coming from a predatory consultant, that sort of thing. So any documentation that supports that you've talked to the community about the project is very welcome in an application. Also include a detailed budget, a line-by-line breakdown of project costs. If you don't know that upfront, that's fine, but most funders will require it to have a line budget breakdown before releasing funding. So make sure that either have a timeline to get that. Maybe the contractor you've got a preliminary quote from said, okay, contact me when you got the funding, and then I'll give you a line-by-line breakdown. So just ensure that you're going to get that. Most of this information can be found in quotes. You'll get a package from a contractor or a consultant with a line-by-line breakdown of exactly what they're going to do and where the costs are coming from. Again, try to obtain preliminary quotes. It does strengthen the validity of your budget. If you submit a budget without a quote, if you're in the ballpark, that's fine, but funders will be asking, okay, well, where did these numbers come from if you don't have a quote to back that up? And most funders will require quotes before releasing funding. Here at NRT, we do request an updated budget and updated quote from contractors before releasing any funding, just to ensure that the project costs are the most accurate. And what to avoid in writing proposals. So ChatGPT, it can be a great editing tool, but don't use it to write the entire application from scratch. We can tell. It's very smart, but it's not quite at the point where you can just plunk in the answers and it'll have an amazing application for you. What I do recommend is writing an application and then throwing it into ChatGPT and say, can you edit this to make it a bit better? So make sure you're having some form of original content in your application, because again, we can tell really if it's just a fully ChatGPT generated application. Don't include any non-relevant information, so only include what's directly relevant to the proposed project. This can be kind of a widespread. Again, maybe this is part of your larger 10-year community plan, your economic development plan, but we see a lot of applications that will just kind of throw in all of the documents and studies they've done for the last 10 years. And that doesn't really help us about your new main road, when we're looking at a solar panel on a building across the side of town. So making sure that you're including all information for a purpose that is directly related to the proposed project. Also, don't include any documents that contradict your application. That does seem quite obvious, but we do see that occasionally, where ensuring the proposed project aligns with previous engagement and studies. About every application, we do see a project that goes, hey, we want to do a solar project in this community, and they'll attach a community energy plan they did, and the community energy plan specifically says we don't want to do solar projects. Then we go, well, why are you doing a solar project then? So ensuring that all the studies you're submitting with the with your application do actually support your proposed project. Again, seems obvious, but we do see that quite a lot. And then also don't include long paragraphs for the sake of length. Just stick to the relevant details. I am totally fine when reviewing a funding application with a couple bullet points or a couple sentences that just say exactly what the question is asking. I don't need a lot of fluff information, and I know a lot of funders feel the same way. Ensure you're answering the question, but it's not university or school where you're just having to meet a word count. Just ensure you're sticking to the relevant details. And with that, that is my presentation. Feel free to visit our website at newrelationshiptrust.ca or contact the BCI-CEI applications at nrtf.ca or cedar@nrtf.ca, and we'll be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Great, thank you so much, Sarah. That's so informative. I was wondering if you'd be able to share the slides with the group after. Would that be okay?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Awesome. Great, so we'll move on to the next presentation. So I'll go ahead and introduce Jasmine. Jasmine Bretty is a senior program advisor with the BC Ministry of Indigenous Relations and Reconciliation, where she supports the implementation of revenue sharing agreements and initiatives. Jasmine has had the privilege of working with and for Indigenous communities throughout Alberta, and in 2023 she moved from Treaty 6 territory to Lekwungen territory on Vancouver Island. So Jasmine, I'll let you go ahead and share your screen.
Perfect. Can you see that?
Yep, we're seeing the not the full slideshow though, we're just seeing yep, there you go.
Oh, thank you. Yes, I'm a bit new to Zoom, so thanks for your patience. Yes, as I was saying, my name is Jasmine Freddy. I work at the government of British Columbia, and I am joining from a Columbian territory. Um, and yes, I'm here to talk about the First Nation Clean Energy Business Fund, and I'll get started. Um, so I'll start by talking about the different funding streams available under the First Nation Clean Energy Business Fund. I assume most people here are aware and have likely applied or participated in the fund. But just to quickly go over, there's two streams. The first one is the capacity funding, and that is a lifetime maximum of 50,000. It was reset in 2021, so yes. And you can see the main projects under that funding are for community energy plans, pre-feasibility studies, and feasibility studies, and training for community members. Um, and then there's also equity funding, and that is for a lifetime maximum of 500,000. And there's just a quick description below of the projects that are eligible. Sorry, I'm having some slight, my screen is just getting turned around. Okay, back on track. And yeah, so before I get into the tips for writing the application, I just want to go over the review process that the First Nation Clean Energy Business Fund undertakes with an intake, just to reference back the tips to kind of show when those tips are going to be helpful. So for example, for this year, the application just closed April 30th in 2024. And then after the application closes, a review panel convenes, and this review panel is composed of representations from the natural resource ministries from British Columbia, as well as the New Relationship Trust. And this review panel reviews every application and provides scores on metrics related to project viability / feasibility, the benefit to the community that they can see within the application, and then support from the community. And unfortunately, there are always more applications than there is funding. So the applications are scored against each other. And so the highest scoring applications are then selected for funding. So moving on, moving on to the tips. So getting started, here's just some things to keep in mind as you're beginning the application process. So a lot of this is going to reiterate what Sarah was saying, but the first step is to just make sure it's a good fit for the fund, and just review the guidelines and make sure that the project aligns with the overall objectives of the project or of the program. Be aware of the lifetime maximums. Similar to what Sarah was saying, unfortunately, we did receive a few applications that were not eligible because the nation's lifetime maximums had already been met. But if you reach out to us ahead of time, the program staff, we can, if you don't know that, then we can provide insight into what projects have already been funded for the applicant. And just in general, if you just want to know how to get started or what to keep in mind, just feel free to reach out. As Sarah was saying, we do appreciate it. And it's one of the favorite parts of my job is to connect and to talk about applications. So just think of it as you're doing us a favor, especially government staff. It's always really nice to connect and have those conversations. So just feel free to reach out, even if you're getting started. And yes, and then so once we move on to building the proposal, I think this is going to reiterate a lot of what Sarah was saying as well, but it's good to provide the qualitative and quantitative data as to why this project is important to the nation at this point. The data is of course very important, but we also want to know why this project, like what's led the nation to this project at this point. So for example, in our capacity applications, there is a section that asks the history of the nation. And I really, I want to provide the advice that this is a good opportunity to kind of provide insight to the reviewers as to what's brought the nation to this project. And ultimately what the reviewers of the application want to know is how is the project, what problem are the activities of the project going to solve? So this is a really good opportunity to kind of show what the problem is. And I know sometimes it might seem obvious, but it's really good to just list and make clear what benefit the project will do. And bullet points are good, as Sarah was saying. But for example, there was one application that had made clear that they had done a survey, and it was a heat pump application. So there was you know, I think that the benefit is clear what the heat pumps are, but they took it a step further where they had done just a preliminary online survey and had gotten data as to how many members of their community was struggling to afford their heat to afford to heat their home, and if they were interested in heat pumps, and just took that extra step to show that this is something that the nation wants to pursue, and that there is a problem that this project will solve. And so when we go back to thinking about metrics as the benefit of the community, it's just very easy for the reviewers to kind of see that in the application. So just making it easy for the reviewers to see where the benefit is going to be. And both the capacity and equity applications have an objective section in the applications, and this is a really good opportunity as well to discuss what the ultimate objective, what the problem will solve. And then, yeah, similar to what Sarah was saying too, is just be specific to your nation. I guess this is kind of referring to those consultants that might not delve specifically into the community. So yeah, just make sure within the application that there is a strong correspondence to the reality specific to the nation, because obviously yeah, some things might seem obvious, but there is nuance between communities, and that's something that really stands out to reviewers when we can really see the specifics. Yes, and here's some tips for when getting ready to submit. So some programs offer preliminary reviews of applications. We at the First Nation Clean Energy Business Fund are very happy to review. If it gets within a week, it's a bit tight because then we start getting many applications. This year, for example, we received over 30 applications, so it can get a bit tight. But if it's within a few weeks of that application close, then we're very happy to review. Of course, it's with the review panel hasn't convened yet, so you know, I can only give my advice as program staff. I can't guarantee that it's going to, you know, resonate with all of the review panel members, but we can certainly give advice on the history that we have. Yes, and then make sure that the budget reflects the project outlined in the proposal. So Sometimes I think there might be two perhaps different members who are developing the proposal, and then it might be someone from accounting or a different department developing the budget. It doesn't happen too often, but sometimes it does seem like it could be a different there's just sometimes a mismatch. So just make sure that what's discussed in the application is reflected in the budget. So for example, if the application discusses it doesn't discuss a consultant and yet there's consultant fees in the budget, that's always something to keep in mind. Yes, and I think there was oh yes, and if there are accommodations or travel, it's also good to note who is traveling and who the accommodations are for. I know it might seem obvious, but it's always good to just be specific. Yeah, and I would also advise to note any sort of in-kind contributions being made by the nation or community. So for example, if there's a community event and we see that the costs are very low, it could be that the nation is, providing that space for the community event. So it's also good just to just yeah, register what's being provided in kind because that's important and that should be noted. Yes, so and have written support from in the form of a band council resolution. Yes, so sometimes the BCR isn't ready when the application closes. We do allow, I think it's 2 weeks after the close, but after that, the review council needs to convene as quickly as possible to meet a 90-day turnaround. So unfortunately, if there is no BCR, we can't review it. And so yes, just always good to make sure that that's provided. And yes, get confirmation that the program staff, the application has been received. Sometimes things do go in our junk folder. I'm always checking, but it's always good just to get that confirmation. Yes, and here's some other resources that I think could be helpful. So there is the Clean BC, the Indigenous Community Energy Coach Program. So this is the contact information that they can help discuss funding opportunities available to fuel switching and energy efficiency projects. For example, the heat pump incentive. So yes. And then as well, the BC Community Climate Funding Guide. I'm sure many of you are aware, but I just thought I would do a plug because it's a really good guide that the Ministry of Energy, Mines, and Low Carbon Innovation compile. And yes, it's up to date. I just looked on it today, and I think that they said that there was 56 different application or different funding streams. So I would definitely recommend that. And then yeah, here's my contact information.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you.
Would it be okay if you sent me the slides as well so I can share them with the group?
Oh, for sure.
Awesome. All right. So we'll get into the Q&A. I will mention we got a couple questions in the chat. You can put them in there, but there's also a Q&A box at the bottom. So if you do have a question for Sarah or Jasmine, please go ahead and drop them in the Q&A box. It was obviously the presentations were super comprehensive, but we do have a few questions. I have a question about the application windows for the different funding streams. I know you don't always know these super far in advance. So the first one is about NRT's renewable energy stream, which has a deadline this Monday. Do you happen to know when the next intake will open, Sarah?
No, like I said, we don't don't have an exact date for the next renewable energy generation stream intake, but generally we hold them about once a year. So I'm guessing maybe next spring. But again, the CEP and DSM streams are still open and accepting applications till the end of November this year.
Great, thank you. And that's, I believe this is a new, the rolling window is a new thing that you have, right?
Yes, this is the first year we're doing it in response to feedback that we receive from communities. So
Makes sense. And then how about the business fund? Do you know, Jasmine, when the next intake will start, or even just an estimate, or if you don't know, that's okay.
Yeah, no, sorry. It's based on available funding, and because this year's intake hasn't been approved yet, so once those get announced, and we're expecting that'll happen July 29. So keep an eye on our website around that time.
Great, thank you. The other question from our side, we were wondering for, I know, Jasmine, you mentioned that 1 week is a bit too short, but in terms of reaching out for communities reaching out to your staff for having a draft application reviewed, what kind of timeline would you prefer? Maybe you'll go to Jasmine first and then Sarah.
Yeah, even 2 weeks is fine, really. But I mean, as soon as possible is great. But yeah, if it's 2 weeks before, then that's usually when I also have time to do those debriefs.
yeah, I would say it depends on how much feedback you want. If you're looking for a full comprehensive review, like Justin said, anywhere from 1 to 2 weeks would be great. But if you're just looking for feedback on a specific question, I've received one like the day before the application window closed. So it depends on how much feedback you want. The more feedback you want, the more time we're going to need to provide a good answer for you. So
Yeah, it makes sense. And I think everybody's busy, the community staff are busy, you guys are busy, so probably the sooner the better. And then I had another question for Sarah, just about the project management service that you have, the turnkey solution. Which streams is that available for? And are there options for communities to customize the service? Like, do they choose a consultant, or do you choose a consultant for them?
yeah, absolutely. So that's for our CEDAR program and both the community energy planning and the DSM stream that we offer the turnkey service. And there is absolutely options to customize. We kind of say it's a range from everything from we just give you the money and you do your own thing to we completely do everything. We pay the consultants, we'll project manage, but we'll still check in with you. But it's really whatever support we provide is up to the community. So if you have a consultant in mind and you have an idea, you just don't have the time to, kind of do the finance side of it, we're happy to do that. Yeah, just get in contact with us and we'll work out what you need. But yes, it's absolutely whatever the community wants, we're happy to provide for those two streams.
Great, thank you. One more plug, audience, if you have questions, please feel free to throw them in the Q&A or the chat if you like. I was wondering, you mentioned some of the things not to do, and you also mentioned folks potentially missing things in the questions. Are there common errors or omissions that you see that people should keep in mind to avoid? Maybe I'll pass it to Jasmine first and then go over to Sarah.
Yes, nothing specific comes to mind. Just the BCR is unfortunately one of the important ones because that means that the application will be ineligible. So I think that's is one of the important ones to keep in mind. And then yeah, just providing the background for the community is maybe another omission I see as well. Yes, I'll leave it at that.
I would say the most common kind of error that I see in applications is including costs that aren't eligible. We see that happening a lot. We have a limit on what percent of the project will fund for contingency or administrative fees. And a lot of people will include that. We'll have to do a back and forth before we, do the contribution agreement. So I would say the biggest kind of error I see is including costs that aren't eligible. So again, make sure you're reading it carefully or reach out to staff if you're not sure.
Great, thank you. And then I guess kind of a reverse of that question, is there anything specific that makes an application really stand out? I think maybe you've already included that already in your presentation, but if there's anything that you think really makes a standout application, I think people would love to hear that as well. Oh, I'm supposed to pass it to someone. Maybe I'll give it to Sarah first.
For sure. The best applications we receive are ones that have a large amount of community involvement and community engagement. An application that, the community has clearly done a lot of thinking about it. They've done engagement sessions they've put together, and the community knows exactly what they want, and now they're just applying for funding. So that would be those are the best applications we receive, is when we can really see the need the community has expressed and how this is going to solve their issue.
Yeah, I'll agree with that.
Great. So we have a question in the chat box. I think this is asking about eligibility. Jeff, maybe if I don't get your meaning across properly, you can write something in the chat back to me. But he's looking to put a solar system into his community, tying in on his side of the meter. So I think that's maybe not necessarily tying into the BC Hydro grid, and he's wondering if that would be eligible for either of your funding programs. Maybe I'll go to Jasmine first.
Yeah, I don't know off the top of my head. I think we would have to take a deeper look at the application.
Yeah, I'm assuming that you're referring to behind the meter kind of projects, and those are eligible for our programs. So.
All right, and a follow-up question is, do you fund district energy systems? Maybe Jasmine first.
Sorry, district energy systems?
So like a district energy, the way that I have heard of them is something like you'd have a biomass boiler that would provide heat through pipes to several buildings on one system.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't know off the top of my head.
Yes, we funded those in the past, so good for energy.
All right. And then we had a question in the chat. They're looking for examples of how they can show that the community wants the project. So they're asking if a community engagement summary would be applicable, or if there would be other deliverables that you'd be looking for. Maybe I'll go to Sarah first.
Yeah, community engagement summary would be perfect. I would be very happy to receive that. Just really any sort of documentation. Again, we've kind of received minutes from council meetings saying that they've talked about it. We've received like a PowerPoint presentation that's happened at a community dinner. Really just, yeah, anything that, even if you just want to write a paragraph of what you've done, like, hey, we've sent out this, we've talked to these people, anything, yeah, any documentation, just saying what you did to engage the community.
Anything to add on that one, Jasmine?
Oh, no, yeah, I think that covers it.
Awesome. All right, thanks everyone for the questions. If you have any more, please go ahead and throw them in the chat or in the Q&A. I know, Jasmine, you mentioned some complementary funding programs, BC Indigenous Energy Coach, and the funding guide. Are there any other complementary funding programs that haven't been mentioned that you think folks should check out for their efficiency projects? Maybe I'll pass it Jasmine first in case there's something you want to add. Otherwise, then Sarah can go ahead.
Yes, sorry, nothing else specific for me.
Yeah, I mean, the Community Climate Funding Guide is a very comprehensive. The folks at Emily have done a really great job of capturing all of the funding programs available. The only thing I can say is maybe reach out to NRCan. They have programs that kind of fluctuate quite a bit, and so sometimes you can sneak into an application that was already closed. That would be the only thing I would say.
Great, and I will plug that we're actually having in September a learning lab, virtual learning lab with NRCan about their funding program. So if you guys want to learn about NRCan funding programs, we will put a registration link in the chat for that as well. And I believe the climate funding guide, they also recently rolled out a notifications functionality, so you can like put your email in and they'll email you if you're interested in certain types of funding. So lots of interesting resources there. This also might have been covered already, but I'm just wondering if it's somebody's first time submitting a proposal, either in general or to your program specifically, is there anything that maybe you didn't cover that you think they should know? If not, then no worries, just say pass or whatever, but I'll pass it over to Sarah first.
Sure, I can think of two things off the top of my head. One is that in our CEI application, we have kind of a note saying that there's a 10% contribution by the community that's required. That can be in-kind support through project management. Oftentimes we will hear people saying, oh, we don't have the money to contribute that 10%. We're not looking necessarily for money as that contribution. We're just kind of looking for some sort of, again, the community involvement. Someone we can talk to is going to help us through the funding. We'll do the reporting. That is totally eligible. And then two is just sometimes how long it can take and the patience that's required. In our last CEI intake, we received almost 60 applications. That took us a while to get, excuse me, a while to get through instead of our usual kind of shorter time. So again, yeah, just expecting patience. Feel free to reach out and ask for an update, but yeah, sometimes it can take a while. It really depends on how many applications we get because we don't know. We can't give an accurate estimate.
Yeah, makes sense. How about you, Jasmine?
Yeah, nothing I think that I haven't said already, but maybe I'll just reiterate that program staff really, we love hearing from the communities directly and from nations. So yeah, just feel free to reach out.
Following on from that one, if communities are looking for support with grant writing, do you have recommendations of, I don't know if you can provide recommendations or not, of consultants or folks they should reach out to for that type of support in terms of preparing the proposals? Maybe I'll go to Sarah first.
I can't provide any recommendations, but what I would recommend is to reach out to similar communities. Even if you see something in the news of a community did a project that's similar to what you're looking at, just go to their website and shoot them an email. Most of them are very happy to share. They just don't get the opportunity to, and ask them what consultant they used or how they got the funding would be my recommendation.
Great. Yeah. Anything to add on that one, Jasmine?
No.
Yeah, I think we'll look to wrap up fairly soon. So I've got like a couple more questions on my list, and then if anybody in the audience has more questions, feel free to throw them in the Q&A for us. I was wondering if you have any tips for communities that are looking to sort of scope out a project that would fit into one of your programs. And yeah, I think that's kind of a big question, so you can take it in any direction you like, but maybe I'll pass it to Jasmine first.
I would say just send us an email, give us some details, and if it's not clear right off the bat and we need to do some follow-up on our end, then yeah, we can do that. But yeah, just reach out to program staff.
Yeah, definitely reiterate that if you're just looking to scope out a project, shoot us an email, reach out, or reach out to one of Fraser Basin's, ask an energy advisor type thing. That's really a helpful service as well. But yeah, we can kind of walk you through what the major steps would be if you're looking at, and can talk about next steps. That's a pretty common question we get asked as well. So don't be shy. Yeah, reach out. That's all I can say.
Right on. Yeah, that's super good to know. So folks, reach out to Sarah or Jasmine if you have any questions on project scope. Sarah, I did have one other question just for you about NRT's approach to funding. I saw a really great video that you guys put out around the trust-centered approach and how it's working to reduce administrative burden. So yeah, if you could talk a little bit about that, I think that would be really interesting.
For sure. So like I mentioned, we're Indigenous run and led organization, and, we do exist in somewhat of a colonial framework, but we do try our best to work around that. So a phrase that we like to say a lot of the time is that we don't adjudicate, we validate. So if you come to us with a project, we're not adjudicating the idea or anything like that. We're just validating your project. It is a little bit different for clean energy because we often receive funding requests that are much greater than the amount of funding we receive. But for the rest of NRT, if you submit an application, for example, to the nation building program, if the project isn't quite what is acceptable to the guidelines, program staff will work with you to kind of update your application to make sure that it fits in, because we're not ever adjudicating your idea. We're just helping you kind of validate your idea and helping you get to the finish line for that. And then the same way is that we've reduced significantly our paperwork for the application process for all of our programs. And we continue to do that on a yearly basis. Every year, we look at the feedback we've received on the application process and what sections that we can cut out, what are we missing, And then as well as recently, we've kind of updated our reporting requirements where we do have a final report template. However, we don't actually require a final report that's the written word. If you're more comfortable with a phone conversation, we can write down the report for you. If you're open to a site visit, that also counts as a final report. You can send in a video. Really, however you want to show us off the project is acceptable as a final report. So again, yeah, we try to work with the communities. If the timelines need to be extended, that's totally fine with us. Again, it's a trust-based approach. We trust the communities. It's their project. They know what we're doing. We're just here to support them as much as we can. So
Awesome. Yeah, that sounds amazing. I think that's what everybody wants. So we also receive funding and we like that idea too. Jasmine, you're really nodding along there. I don't know if there's anything you wanted to add on that topic.
Oh yeah, no, nothing. I'm just really excited about the approach.
Awesome. Well, we're getting close to lunchtime, so I think we'll wrap up. Just wanted to see if either of you had any final thoughts that you wanted to share. There's a question, will the slides be available? Yes, I will send out the slides to everyone along with the recording, so you can share those. But yeah, maybe Jasmine, do you have any final thoughts for the group?
Yeah, nothing specific, but just thanks so much for your time.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you so much for being here. And Sarah, how about yourself?
yeah, again, thanks for joining us. Hopefully it was useful to you, and I'm always available for questions or if you want to chat. Yeah, even if it's months from now, it's part of my job. So definitely happy to hear from you whenever about whatever.
Awesome. Well, thank you both so much. I really want to, yeah, express our gratitude that you took the time out to speak at our webinar today. I know that everybody's very busy, so we really appreciate it. And thanks to everyone who attended as well. We know that you're also busy, so we really appreciate your questions, your interaction, and your attention. And then just to wrap up, I will let you know that when you close the window, a little survey is going to pop up in your browser. If you have time to fill that out and give us some feedback on what other events you'd like to see and how you enjoyed this event, we'd really appreciate that. So yeah, thanks very much, everyone, and have a wonderful afternoon. Bye.